So what did we learn in our previous session? One. We learned about page object model. We have seen how do we achieve this page object model, right? Remember it? On POF, POM, POF, we have seen these four different levels by using bilocators, by using element locators, and then by using separate operations. And then we have different pages, and then we have integrated or we had integration classes. So this is what we have learned in our previous session. Now, in a similar fashion, we have another concept called page factory model, which is given by Selenium. We have discussed about page object model, which is a plain Java model. There is nothing special which is made out of Selenium WebDriver. These all things, the separation of methods, having different classes, inheritance, all those are all the Java concepts. So we are using old Java concepts. We used Java concepts and implemented page object model. Now page factory model or page object factory is another model which is available for us to implement the page object model or page factory model. So similar to POM, we have POF, but here in POF, we are not depending on Java. We are, backend, for support, we are again using Java, but for applying or for performing these operations, our Selenium WebDriver is providing us some annotations. Okay, so these are those annotations. We can use this at the rate of find by, at the rate of find by, at the rate of find all, at the rate of cache lookup. All these annotations, these annotations are coming from page object factory model. Okay, why do we use these annotations? What is the purpose of these annotations, and how do we use this? Let us see now. Okay, so you already know how do we achieve at the final level of page object model. In real time, we are going to use this way only. Okay, now let us create separate class again for page factory model, for which I'm going to create a new class. It is C6. C6 underscore 1 underscore login page. Okay, I don't need any main method here, so I'm using finish. Okay, now if you compare this, we wrote, we found the element, and we wrote the method to identify that particular element, right? Driver.find element. But in WebDriver, sorry, in POF, in WebDriver, if you want to utilize it, we don't have to write any methods. We will just use this annotation called at the rate of find by. Okay, at the rate of find by, and we will declare the web element here. Public web element. This is username dot username underscore text box. That's all. Let us import this. This is normal declaration of a variable. Now we have to assign some value or assign the identification mechanism to this variable, right? To this input box, text box. So for that, we will use at the rate of find by. So this annotation helps us get rid of this as well as this. We don't have to write them manually. It will automatically, it will by default do that with the help of this at the rate of find by annotation. So whenever your Selenium or whenever your compiler sees that, okay, there is an at the rate of find by and you have Selenium library, so it is assuming that, okay, I have to find this element and assign it to this variable. Okay, so instead of writing our own method to find the elements, driver.find element, we can use this at the rate of find by, which will find the element and store that element locator in this variable. Now, how do we find this locator? We can provide the information to this element locator that how are we finding? How is equals to how dot. How do you want to identify it? Using its ID, name, or class name, or XPath, whatever it is. I want to find it using its ID. So how dot ID, comma. And then what is the ID? ID is equals to, I can mention in the value, text username. Am I correct? On the orange HRM. Or we have it here, right? Okay. This is the txt username. That's all. Now let me import this find by. Let us import this how. So now we have imported all these things. You see, within a single line, we are able to identify an element and store it inside this variable. You don't have to write a driver dot find element. This will automatically, this will do inside, this will help us do that. Understood? Now let us write another element at the rate of find by, and this mentioning of this how is equals to how dot id or how dot hpath is optional. This is not mandatory. Without having this also, now if I want to identify an element, I can simply say like this, txt password, and then public web element password underscore text box. This is also correct. This is also correct. If you want to specifically mention how do you want to identify this particular element, then you need to mention this. If you don't want, then we can ignore. Anyway, we are going to mention it here, right? What is the property of it? So you don't need to mention this. This is one way and this is the other way. Okay. And now, first let us see at the rate of find by, then we can see the other things. Okay. Now we have to click on the login button. So what is the identification for the login button? It is again button login. So I'm just ID is equals to button dot, and then public web element login underscore. Now that's all. Now we have these three methods helps us find these three elements: username, password, and login. Now you have to perform the operations on it, right? So we have written some methods here to perform the operations. The same methods will be there here. But instead of calling a method, see, in our previous class, we were calling a method, but now we will just use this variable username dot text box. Okay. And then password dot, sorry. Password dot text box. And then this will be my login button. Login button dot here. Since these are static, it is showing me those errors. So I'm just removing the static. You see how simple you are finding these elements and then assigning those values to some variable, and then you are performing the operations. That's all. Similarly, we can create the other two classes as well. Let me go and create. Now you understood this, right? How do we create these elements? How do we find these elements and perform the operations? Okay. Fine. Now we have these element locators. Now let us go and create pages for other classes as well. Okay. Instead of wasting time, what I'm going to do is I'll copy the classes from my previous sessions, which will have the same thing. Paste. Okay, I'll create two classes and then copy the content of it. C6 underscore 2 underscore home page. Let us go. Same, we are finding the PIM and then link add employee and then performing the operations on it. So I'll just copy those methods. Okay, there is no difference. Whatever we have discussed on login page, it's the same. We created these elements and then we are performing the operations. Similarly, C6.2, we are finding those elements PIM and then link add employee and then performing the operations. Okay, and now let us create another class. New class C6 underscore 3 underscore add EMP page. Okay, let me see. Add EMP page. Again, the same element locators and the operation methods. So now we have all the elements. But you see, did we pass any driver to any of these methods? Did we pass the driver? Then how will Selenium know that on this browser I have to find these elements? We have to pass the driver object. So our POF has some extra feature or a feature called we have to use this page factory init elements method always. If you want to initialize if you want to initialize the driver or if you want to initialize the elements which are in that particular page. Now we have, what do we say, this one, login page. Now we have all the elements and at the rate of find by annotations here. But if you want to initialize, that means if you want to find this element and store this inside this variable, then you have to call an extra method that is nothing but page factory dot init elements. Okay, we are going to call this page factory dot init elements method. Once you call this page factory dot init elements method, then this will initialize all the elements of this particular page by passing the driver to it. Okay, now let us see that. Now we have this is a separate class. Yeah, this is our factory. So I'm going to create a new class here, which is C7 underscore POF underscore integrator. I don't need any main method, so I'm just clicking on finish. Common things common. So where is our integration class? Yeah, here. So I have this common, right? Launching the application. I have to launch the application, so I'm using the same code again in this as well. I need the launch application method here because I'm going to use the launch application. Okay. I need to assign this to a variable because I have to pass it to the page elements. So I'm creating a variable called WebDriver. Let us import this WebDriver. Now launch application is there, but we do not have a get page objects method. Now let us create a page objects method. Public static get page objects. Okay, we created a get page objects method. What? Right? Now inside this we have to create objects for these three pages: 6_1, 6_2, and 6_3. So C6_1 pg underscore login is equals to new C61 underscore login page. Okay, so this object I should create on top. Okay, so that everybody will be able to access it wherever they want. public c6 underscore to home page. Let's say pg underscore home. Not doing anything new. Whatever we did yesterday, I'm doing the same. pg underscore add here. Now I will create objects for these pages. Page login. Okay. Okay. This is not static. Then we have pg underscore home is equals to new underscore to home page. And then we'll also create pg underscore add employee is equals to new c6 underscore 3 of add employee page. Now we have created objects for these pages, but did we pass the driver, whatever we have, the driver value, did we pass this driver into these elements? No. Did we create constructor in our yesterday's session? Where is our yeah, here it is our integration. So whenever you are creating an object, we are passing the driver to it. We created a constructor over there and we are passing this driver. This was our need because yesterday when you want to find the element, we used a method, and for that we need the driver object. So that is the reason as part of constructor we are passing the driver to this page. But now in our classes, do we have the driver element here? Are we using the driver object? No, right? We are not using the web driver object. Internally at the rate of find py is using the driver object. So you don't have to pass the driver to this class. So that is the reason I did not create any constructor. And in the integration class also, I'm sorry, not this one. In the integration class also, I'm not passing any driver to this particular pages. Then how do I initialize these elements inside that page, and how do I make that page know that this is the driver? So for that, we have to use another method, page factory. Yeah, you see this page factory from the Selenium support. We have to use this class and call the init elements method. Okay, call the initialize elements method. So I want to initialize the element methods by passing the driver, and on which page? This the second one. The second parameter is the object page object. So here I want to pass onto this login page. That's all. And similarly, I'm going to call this initialize elements method for all the pages. Page underscore home and then page underscore add employee. Now this initialize elements will initialize the objects of this particular page by passing on this driver to at the rate of find by annotation. So internally it uses this driver object and initializes all these elements. Is that clear? We are not going to create a constructor for this class, but whenever you want to initialize the elements, we use this. When we have this init elements method, then only the elements of that particular page will be initialized. Otherwise, you won't be able to see it. It will throw element not assigned some kind of error. Now that we have the integration class, let us create a runner and then run. New class c6 underscore pof underscore runner. Here I need a main method, so I'm creating a main method. Now this runner is extending this integrator, right? Similarly, we use page integration extender. Here also we are using the same, but now we are extending the POF integrator. All right, now we have it. So what we'll do? Launch application. We will pass the URL. Where is that? This one. Okay. Now again, we have the pages, right? Page underscore login dot enter username. Okay. Now, if you see here, we are also able to see the text box web elements. You see password text box web element, username text box web element, because where is that integrator? Yeah, we not this. Where did it go? Yeah, here it is. On login page, we made these text box, password text box, and login button as public because there are chances that we might use it in any other methods. But if you don't want to use it and you don't want to see it and get confused, then just make it private so that these elements will not be shown to you in other classes. Okay. This was by default. It's private. 6.3 here also I can make it private so that these are specific to this class. You won't be able to use these elements outside of this class, but you can use these methods outside of this class. Okay, now see the methods, reduced number of methods. We have only 3 methods: enter username, enter password, and login. All the other methods are from object class. Now I want to enter username. Now here it remains the same. There won't be any change here. Enter password admin 123 and then page underscore login dot click login. That's all. Page underscore home dot click PIM page underscore home dot click add employee and then page underscore add employee dot enter first name fn underscore POF page underscore add employee dot enter last ln underscore page underscore add employee dot click save employee. That's all. You see how simple it is. Same the final level, in real time we use this level, but for this we have to create pages like this, and to integrate we have an integrator where we will create objects for all the pages, and we are initializing the elements of all these pages in this method itself. Whenever we are creating objects for those pages, we are initializing those elements. Understood? Now let us run our POF runner. So this is our POF runner. Let us run it. You see it's running successfully because there is no change. Fn underscore POF, ln underscore POF. That means that is what we created, right? User is created. This is successful, no exceptions. So this is the basic about page factory model, where we have seen some methods or annotation of at the rate of find by. Now similarly, we have 2 other annotations as part of this, right? At the rate of find by and at the rate of find all, and the third annotation or fourth annotation is at the rate of cache lookup. And we also want to discuss about Ajax element locator factory. First, let us see these 3 annotations, and then we will discuss about this Ajax element locator factory. Okay, right. Now, at the rate of find bys and at the rate of find all. So these are 2 extra annotations or 2 extra features that is provided by Selenium, or that is provided by your Selenium WebDriver in finding the web element locators. Okay. For example, now if I go to Orange HRM login page, I want to find this element. Okay, I want to find this username element, but my page has similar elements which is having the text username, span text username. For example, let us assume that I have multiple elements which is having the text username. So I want to check with its parent. Okay, I have this div id is equals to username, and then I have this import. So this is hierarchical order, right? If you want to confirm the element is in this hierarchical order, then you can use this at the rate of find bys. Okay, for example, let us take this password element. I will update here using at the rate of find bys. Do not assume that find bys is find elements. If you want to find a single element, or if you want to find multiple elements, you will use the same find by. But here, if it returns multiple elements, then you will mark this as list. That's all. This will find the multiple elements. If it is a single element, you will not add this list. Okay. All right. Now let us apply find bys to this password object, or to this password element. So what is this find by? To find and find bys helps us identify the elements in the hierarchical order. If the locators whatever you are giving is in the hierarchical order, then only it will identify, otherwise it won't. So let us do that at the rate of find bys. Okay, at the rate of find bys, you will find one, and then you will add the other one. So two locators you have to give it to it, and then those locators you have to mention inside the flower bases. So first one, what is that? I want to find this div. Okay, div id is equals to username. So I'll say xpath is equals to div at the rate of id is equals to div username. Okay, div username, and then I want to find this, right? So I'll use this id is equals to text username. Okay, we have one. Okay. Second one, you can either give xpath or you can give id. It's okay, whatever. You can also give xpath. I think this is not needed. Yeah, I have to give it here. Xpath is equals to. It's not xpath, value is equals to. Check. Inside at the rate of find bys, I have to use at the rate of find bys. Sorry, I forgot it. I forgot the syntax, because generally we will not use this find bys and find the result. So this find bys is going to have a list of elements. So I'll use this flower basis, and inside this I'll use at the rate of find. Inside the at the rate of find by, we already know how do we identify the elements. Xpath is equals to, in single quotes, or you can also find using its id. What is the id? Div username. I'll take this div username. Okay, and then I'll write another find by annotation, which is going to take another id. What is the id or name, whatever you want? I'm going to find it using it. Okay, yeah, we have names. I'll take this. Name is equals to this. Okay, so this is how we write multiple find bys. On find bys, we are writing multiple find by elements. So here, how is it going to find this? First, it is going to find this particular element. And inside this div username, it will search for the child elements whose name is txt username. Understood? So this is hierarchical order. If this is from somewhere else, it is not going to find the element. When we use at the rate of find by, this element should be present inside this element, then it will work. So you see here, input is present inside this div, then only it will work. But if you give this and this, it won't work. Okay, for that we have a separate element again. We have at the rate of find by, and similarly we have another annotation called at the rate of find all. Okay, which is going to be which will search for or condition here. Importing find all. Right. So here it is going to apply and condition. It should find this element, and inside this element it should find this. But find all is going to find all the elements if it is matching any one of the logic, if any one of the thing that is present here. Here you are giving properties of different elements or different HTML tags in the hierarchy, but here we have to provide properties for the same element. Suppose now we have a login button. I might want to find it using its ID, but I'm not sure. Some of the times ID is going to be not button login, it will have some other name. So I want to find it using its value. If either this or either this is matching, then I will click on this login button. Any one of these things, any one for the same element, then I'll click on the login button. So that's, if you want to implement such kind of situation, then you use this. So we do not have value attribute directly, so we have to use xpath is equals to, in double quotes, what is the input tag, double slash input, and then at the rate of value is equals to, what is the value? It's login, right? It should be in single quotes. Single quotes, login, everything is in caps. Okay. Now, what is this find all going to do is, it is trying to find an element which is matching either this property or this property. Find all is or, find by is and hierarchical and. It should find this element, and inside this element it should find this. Okay, let me say hierarchical and condition. This is condition applied on same element. Okay, so understood this at the rate of find by and at the rate of find all. Find by is applying and condition on these two things, and it should be hierarchical order. That means this div text username should be present inside this div username, and then find all is going to apply or condition to the element located. If you want to find this with this or this, sometimes the same element will have different XPath locators, or the same login button on might have on different pages, you might have different XPaths or something. So in those cases, you can use at the rate of find all, and whatever is found on that particular page, that will be assigned to this login button. Is that clear so far? Understood what is find by and find all? Okay. Now let us go to Ajax. Sorry, at the rate of cache lookup. I will not be able to show you the example of this cache lookup, but I'll be explaining you what is this cache lookup. Now, whenever you write these at the rate of find by elements, and then you are having you are storing them on these elements, you are assigning this value to this username text box. So whenever you call this username text box, it will try to find the element at that time, at that point of time in the execution. Whenever you call this username text box, for example here, when you write this username text box, then it is going to search for this element on the page and then find that element and then get it assigned to it and then perform the operation on it. But if you don't want to find it, you know that this is already found. It is already there on the page and you already performed some of the operations. Now you don't want your Selenium to go and search the HTML page again. You want to use which is already found by the Selenium. So what you will do is you'll just add this at the rate of cache lookup. That's all. So what will it do is, if an element is already found during execution and that element has a cache lookup, then it is not going to search for that element on the page again. It is going to just call the element from the cache. Understood? You know what is cache, right? This cache lookup, you can apply to the elements which you want to take it from the cache. If you don't want to find it again and again, you want to just take it from the cache, then you can take it. That's all. All right. Now, let us see about the Ajax element locator factory. Okay, this is another class which is given by the page factory model, which is something interesting. In Selenium, we are having some synchronization techniques. If you remember, we have WebDriver wait or Fluent wait, right? In a similar way, for page factory model, by default, if you want to apply some implicit wait at the driver level, okay, if you want to apply some implicit wait, then we use this Ajax element locator factory. This is also otherwise called as crazy concept of lazy loading. Okay, so what are we doing here? So instead of using expected conditions to check the element presence on the screen, we will use, so these expected conditions is from where? From the WebDriver wait or Fluent wait. We are having some expected conditions provided by Selenium, right? So instead of using those expected conditions, what we do is we use this Ajax element locator factory class, which will help us wait for that particular element for the time that you have mentioned. Okay, so instead of throwing the exception, this is kind of implicit wait which can be applied only on page factory model. Okay, so this is another class called Ajax element locator factory, which is provided by page factory model. If you are using page factory model, this will be useful. Okay, so how do we use it? We have to create an object. So let us go to the integration class. Where is our integration? Yeah, so here for this page factory initialize elements, there are multiple initialize elements. You see here init elements is having 4 different overloaded methods. We have tried this one, last one. Okay, if you have any proxy pages, then you use this proxy pages, but we don't have anything, so it's okay. And we do not have decorators and pages, so we are ignoring these 2 things. Now we want about this. You see element locator factory and the object page, driver and object page. So your init elements is taking another property or another way you can pass, or you can call this init elements with the element locator factory object. So what is that element locator factory? To create this element locator factory object, we have Ajax element locator. But what is this Ajax element locator factory? This helps us apply some wait condition in finding an element. Whenever you are trying to find an element, if that element is not found on the page, you don't have to apply thread.sleep, or you don't have to apply expected conditions of WebDriver wait or Fluent wait. If you have this during initializing your pages, by default, all the elements of this page will wait for the amount of time that you mentioned in this Ajax element locator factory. Understood? Now let me apply this and show it to you once. Ajax element locator factory. You see, Ajax element locator factory, you can create an object, any name, you can give any name. Since this is Ajax element locator factory, I'm using AELF. Is equals to new Ajax element locator factory. It is having only a single constructor and it is taking 2 things. Where do you want to search? Search context is nothing but where do you want to search? On the driver. I want to search on the driver. And then how much is the time do you want to search for that particular element? I want to search on this driver, and then I want to search, or I want to wait for each element up to 30 seconds. That's all. Now, we have already passed that to the Ajax element locator factory. The driver is already passed to Ajax element locator factory. So now we don't have to pass that driver to this. We will pass this Ajax element locator factory to this page. That's all. That is the only difference between Ajax element locator factory and non-Ajax element locator factory. If you pass this driver, it will not wait for anything. If the elements, any one of the element is not found on the home page during execution, it will throw the exception right away. But when you have this Ajax element locator factory, it will wait for that particular element for 30 seconds. Understood? Is it clear? I hope so. So with this, we are done with our POM and POF. And this also marks a completion of our Selenium WebDriver. Okay, so our next topic will be exception handling. So let us see what is exception handling. This is the last topic of Selenium. This should have been covered in Java, but we didn't cover it at that time because in Java we won't see much exceptions, but in Selenium we will see some exceptions. So that is why I'm covering this as part of this session. Okay. Any questions before going to exception handling? Do we have any questions in this page object model or page factory model? Understood all the annotations at the rate of find by, find by, find all, cache lookup, and understood the concept of Ajax element locator factory? Okay, Sharaf has no questions. Yanji, I know it will be a little difficult for you because you didn't join yesterday. No, okay, fine. Then we'll move to the next topic, which is exception handling. I'll close all these files. Now let us go back to Java and let us learn our exception handling. I'm going to create a new class over here. C20, C21, C22. New class. C22 underscore exception. Let me see where did I use exception handling. It will be as part of Java. Yes. Okay. I have the exceptions here. So we have, okay, let us go with the theory first. All right. So what is an exception? Exception is an event which will occur abruptly and which will cause the execution stop abruptly, which is going to alter your flow of execution. That is called as exception. We have seen already a lot of exceptions, right? When we are running some code, for example, I'll say, okay, WebDriver, for example, I'm showing this WebDriver. I'm not assigning any value to this WebDriver, but I just created a variable called a driver. Now I will try to find the element. Driver dot find element by dot id ext username dot send keys of admin. So now there is no exception here. Okay, it says initialize variable. Right? This is another except. Okay, now I initialized this driver with null, and then I'm doing this. Now if I run this, you just observe it will say null pointer exception. What is it saying? Null pointer. Because we do not have a driver, we did not initialize a driver, we did not say Selenium that this should be a Chrome or this should be a Firefox. So this is empty. So that is why it is saying null pointer exception. On a null object, we are trying to apply find element method, which is not possible, which cannot be understood by your Java. So this is one of the exception. We also saw index out of bounds exception, right? If you remember, this is one exception. Okay. Null pointer exception. And similarly, we have index out of bounds exception. So what is that index out of bounds exception? Let us create some array. Array nums is equals to, I'll say 100. It should be 200, 300, 400. How many elements do we have in this array? 4. 0, 1, 2, 3. Now let us try to print out the fourth one, nums of index 4. Okay. Let me comment out this, because if we have an exception, then it won't be able to continue further. Okay. Now let me run this. You see index out of bounds exception. So like this, we have n number of exceptions that we have seen. Index out of bounds exception, and then what do we say, element not found exception, null pointer exception, and then division by 0 exception, arithmetic exception, mathematical exception. So like that, we have so many exceptions that might arise during your execution. Now we have to handle it, right? So when it says that this is a null pointer exception, if you want to handle it, I don't want to stop my execution. I want to continue my execution by assigning some value to the driver. Then in handling of that exception, you can assign that property. But why do we need to handle this? Because for example, you are working on any of the application and you unexpectedly entered numbers instead of characters. Okay, it was asking your name, but you entered your age. For example, it was asking your name. Instead of entering Nikhil, I entered my age as 30. So the application is expecting a string variable, but I gave an integer variable. So application crashes and completely shows application crashed or some other page which is shown to the user. Will that be okay? No, right? You shouldn't abruptly end the execution flow for the user. You should give him clear information that you should enter only text here, not the numbers. So we are handling it. We are giving information to the user, and then we are also handling the exceptions if any arises in the backend. Right? So that exception, if there is any exception, we need to handle it. That is this exception handling technique. Okay. So now these are all the code that is causing the exceptions. Now we want to handle it. So how do we handle it? What are the exception handling techniques? Let us see. What are the types? What are the techniques? Okay, what is an exception? Exception is something which is occurred during compilation or execution. So that means we have two things. During compilation, we might get exceptions, and during execution, we might get exceptions. What will happen if we get some exception? It will disturb the normal execution flow of the program. For example, let me uncomment this. Then after this, I'm having another sysO statement. Okay, I'll say this is end of my program. Okay, if I execute, this should also be printed on my console. All right, now let us see what happens. Is it printing? This is end of my program, but the execution is completed. Execution is abruptly stopped, right? It is not completing. It is not continuing with the flow. It just ended right away. Is that clear? So whenever there is an exception, the execution abruptly ends. It will not go further and execute the steps below it. Okay. Then there are three types of exceptions. One is checked, the second one is unchecked, and third one is error. Checked means you will find the exception during runtime only. For example, if I go back, I'll come into this. Then if I uncome into this, now I will suppose I will not assign any value to this driver. Now you see it is throwing an error during saving only. I did not run it, but it is throwing an error here directly that it is cannot be initialized. It is not initialized. So these kind of exceptions are called as checked exceptions. During compilation, during when you save the program, then only you will be able to see this exception. You don't have to run it. You will directly find the errors here. This is compile time exception. Whatever you are finding before running and during compilation, then it is called as compile time exceptions. And for example, now if I take the below one, is it throwing any exception now? Do we have any, is it throwing any errors or warnings now? Right? But when I run, it is giving me this null array index out of bounds exception. So if you don't see any warning while compiling or while saving the program, but you see it only when you run it, then that is called as runtime exception or unchecked exception. If it is already during compilation, it is found, it is called as checked exception or compile time exception. It is, if it is found only during runtime, then it is called as runtime exception or unchecked exception. Understood? And then error. Error is a human-made mistakes. We cannot do anything on this. We can handle this checked exception or unchecked exceptions, but we cannot handle the errors. Errors are something that made by human. It was expecting some information, but you are giving some other wrong information. Then that is called as error. Okay. So how do we handle these exceptions? With the help of try-catch block or using throws keyword. If I want to handle, if I want to perform some operation, then I'll use try-catch block. Then if I don't want to handle the exception, I want to give it to the end user that they want, if however they want to implement, they can implement that exception, or they can resolve that exception. So for that reason, we can use this throws keyword. Okay, there are two ways to handle the exceptions. One is using try-catch block and the other one is using throws keyword. Okay. Now what is checked exception? It is found during compilation. What do we have to remember over here is checked exceptions are found during compilation and given intimation to the developer, but they are raised during runtime only. Now, if you see here, this is giving intimation to us, right, that this is null pointer, but it is not throwing any exception. Do we see an exception now directly? No, you will see this exception only during running. Let me run this. Yes. And you see unresolved compilation problem. The local variable driver may not have been initialized. The same is shown here. The local variable driver may not have been initialized. You see? So though the compile time exceptions are shown during compilation only, but the exception will be thrown during runtime only. When you run only, then this will be thrown. But before running, your compiler is giving a heads up that, okay, boss, you are having an issue here. You might need to fix it. Understood? So that is compile time exception. And then examples like a class not found exception. You are trying to create an object, but there is no class of that kind. Okay. Then it will say class not found exception. No such method exception. You are trying to call some method, but that method is not there. Then it is no such method exception. Interrupted exception, this we have seen during thread.sleep. If you remember, where did I add those thread.sleeps? Somewhere I added, right? On Selenium. Yep. You see here, thread.sleep. This will also throw an exception inbuilt. Okay. But I don't want to handle it. So what did I do? I used throws keyword here. Throws interrupted exception. This interrupted exception is host from thread.sleep method. When I'm calling this, it is giving me this interrupted exception. Okay. So those are all the examples. Okay. And unchecked exceptions, these are not found during compilation. Do we see any error at these lines? No, right? We are not seeing any exception or error at this point. But when we run this, you are seeing array index out of bounds exception. Those are called as unchecked exception or runtime exceptions. Okay. Examples are array index out of bounds, null pointer exception, and no such element found exception. Okay. Null pointer exception also we have seen, right? If I uncomment this and then I assign some value to this, driver is equals to, or driver is equals to empty. No, I cannot assign empty because that will become a string. Assign null. Now we don't see any exception over here. It's just a warning. We don't see any exception over here. But if you run it, you will see the exception. Null pointer exception. You see null pointer exception. So these are some of the samples of runtime exceptions. So you understood what is checked exception, what is unchecked exception? Is that clear? Yeah, Anjali, shut up. Is that clear? Yes. Okay. Thank you. And what is an error? So errors are something. These are caused due to various reasons. Like, for example, you are running your application on your system, but suddenly your internet went off. Can we do anything? We can't do anything. We can't handle these errors. Or you are trying. I mean, you are trying to enter your username and password, but unknown or unknowingly you entered a wrong key. Can we handle such kind of things? It's from the user side, right? If you are giving intentionally wrong inputs or unknowingly wrong inputs, or sometimes developer, instead of applying some logic, he applied a different logic. Then that is also we cannot handle. Such kind of things, human made mistakes or errors. If you have anything of such kind, we won't be able to handle them. We won't be able to handle the errors. Okay. So now let us see the exception handling tree structure image. So you'll understand there are exception handling in Java. If I go to images, you see this? All the exceptions, parent class is throwable. From throwable, we are having two things, exceptions and errors. Errors are human made mistakes, so we won't be able to handle the errors, but we will be able to handle the exceptions. Again, these exceptions are divided into two types, which is checked exceptions and the other one is unchecked exceptions. Checked exceptions are found during compilation, and some of the samples are input output exception, SQL exception, class not found exception, null pointer exception. So these kind of exceptions. Unchecked exceptions are found during runtime. So such as arithmetic exceptions, null pointer exceptions, index out of bounds exception, like this. Okay. So you have some exceptions. So we have two things, exceptions and errors. We can't handle errors. We won't be able to do anything as part of or to resolve errors. We have to fix those errors. We have to fix it. We won't be able to handle it. We have to fix them. Whenever we find some error, we will fix them. Okay. But exceptions, we can have exceptions. We can handle them, because in what situations we will not know what will happen. So that is why we have a mechanism to handle the exceptions, which might be caused by your applications. So now let us see. You understood this hierarchy, right? This is a throwable interface, and then you have exceptions and errors. Errors can't be handled. Exceptions is again divided into two things: checked exceptions and unchecked exceptions. Checked are found during compile time, unchecked are found during runtime. We can handle both of these. Okay. Right. Now let us go back to the theoretical part. So this is what we have seen, throwable, and in throwable we have error and exception. errors like out of memory, stack overflow, and then any other errors which we cannot handle, human made mistakes. And throwable, we have exceptions. These are two types, checked and unchecked. Examples for this checked and unchecked we have seen already here. I already wrote here example for checked exception and example for unchecked exceptions. Okay, right. Now there are few keywords that you need to understand for exception handling. They are try, catch, finally, throw, throws, and throw. So there is one famous interview question in India. They might out of 10 interviews, they might you will get this question in 5 to 6 interviews. That is, what is the difference between final and finally? We have already learned what is final keyword. Now we are going to see finally. Generally, people get confused with this final and finally. So interviewers will try to confuse you at this place. But if you are clear about what is final and finally, then you will be able to easily answer that question. Okay. So these are the keywords that are associated with exception handling. What are those? Try, catch, finally, throw, and throws. Throw and throws are used to delegate the exceptions. I don't want to handle the exception. I want to give it to some other class. Then I'll use this throws keyword. I want to create a new exception. Then I'll use throw keyword. But to handle the exception, I'll use these three keywords: try, catch, and finally. So how do we handle the exceptions? Let us see that. Okay. Now here I want to I'll comment this. Okay. Now here I want to handle this exception. For example, I'm going to get index out of bounds exception. I know that I'm giving this, right? I got the exception, so I want to handle so that in future I won't be getting this exception. So I will apply. I will write that code inside a try block. Okay, inside a try block, I'll write a code, and then for each a try block cannot go individually. A try block cannot go individually. We should accompany it with a catch block mandatory. Try block should have a catch block or a finally block. Okay, so catch block. What does this catch block do? This catch block is going to catch the exceptions that we are going to get here. Okay, let me give this exception. Okay, you have to mention this. You can be specific about what exception that is going to be arise here, or you can use a generic class exception. So I'm using generic class exception here, E, and then I want to do some assignment, or I want to, this is a static array, so I won't be able to add a value to this array. So what I'm going to do is, instead of printing this, what I'm going to do is, I will print a number which is at the, okay, this is inside try block, so that is why it is unable to access that variable. Okay. If this is the case, then you won't be able to have it. Okay. I'll say I'll directly print okay. So whenever there is an exception inside this, I want to print 400. Or I'll say I don't want to abruptly end my program. I want to say exception, and then I want to continue the execution to see this statement. Now let us run this and see. You see, there is an exception. I simply wrote exception found, but you can write your own message. What is the exception, and then how do you? I mean, if you have any suggestions, you can give those suggestions to handle that exception. See, this is end of my program. Did it end abruptly, or did it continue? Did it complete the execution? Right? When we don't have this try catch, it stopped the execution in between itself. We were not seeing this statement, but now when you added this try catch blocks, this ended smoothly. It went through the end of the program and completed the program. It did not stop in between, right? All right. So this is how we handle the exceptions. Try, catch. Okay. There is one rule that if there is any exception within the try block, then only it will enter into the catch block. If there is no exception in the try block, then it will not come into the catch block at any point of time. If there is any exception, then only it will come into the catch block. Catch block will not be executed if there is no exceptions. Catch block will be executed only if there is any exception in the try block. Okay. Then we have finally. We also have finally keyword. So this finally keyword, what do we do as part of this finally? So we wrote some code, okay, and then if there are any exceptions, we are handling in the catch block. And finally, after the completion of the program, you want to do something. You want to suppose, let us assume that we are logging into Orange HRM, and then we are adding an employee. We have done it. If there are any exceptions in between, this catch block will handle. If there are no exceptions, or even if there are exceptions, after the execution of this complete try block, I want to log out from the application. So I can write the logout related code here. Finally block will get executed even if there is an exception or if there is no exception. In both the cases, it will execute. Let me show you this. See, so this out. Let's say I am in finally block. Now let us run this and see. You'll see the finally block. Oh, yeah. You see, I am in finally block and it is printing 400 from the catch, try block. 0, 1, 2, 3. So it is printing 400 from the try block. It did not go to the exception. Do you see exception found message on the console? No, because there is no exception, it did not go into the catch block. And then it executed, I am in finally block. That means the finally block is executed. Now let me change this to 4 so that it will create an exception. Now let us see. It entered into the catch block. Do you see it? Exception found. And then even if there is a exception or if there is no exception, it is by default executing the finally block. Understood? So finally block is not mandatory. You can have it or you may not have it. So generally we use this finally block to have any clearance, code clearance. Like you did some operation and you want to revert it, or you created some objects and you want to kill those objects, or you want to clear all the mess that you created. Then you use this finally block. Otherwise, you are not going to use this finally block. You understood the try, catch, and finally? Basics of exception handling. Is that clear? Good. And similarly, okay, so you can have code inside the try block, which is again inside a try catch block. You can have try catch block inside a try block, or you can have a try catch block inside a catch block. You can have a try catch block inside a finally block as well. There is no restriction that you cannot have try catch inside a try block. You can have. Okay. Good. So this is about try catch, and finally, this is how we handle the exceptions. Okay. Now let me. Yeah, these are some examples, and these are some usage conditions where what we can do and what we cannot do. Individually, try or catch or finally cannot be existing, and catch and finally blocks cannot be used without try. If we are not having try, you cannot use catch, and without catch or finally you cannot use try. Only try cannot be possible, and single try catch block cannot be used without either the catch or finally. And then in case multiple catch blocks are there, this is one of them that you have to know. So here I am showing only one catch block, but if you want to apply multiple catch blocks, I can also have this catch exception. What is the exception that we got here? Index out of bounds exception, right? Index out of bounds exception. I'll say IB, index out of bounds exception. IOB. Okay. here I'll say CISO. I am in IOB block. So here you can also have multiple catch blocks for the same try. So what will happen here is if I get index out of bounds exception here as part of this try block, then it will enter into this index out of bounds exception. If I get any other exception other than index out of bounds exception, it will go into the generic class exception. Or if you have another catch block, for example, another catch block is here, which will say null pointer exception. Null pointer exception. I'll say NPA. So if a null pointer is being generated from this class or from this try block, then it will enter this null pointer exception. You will write your implementation here. What you have to do when you see a null pointer exception. So like this, you will have multiple you can have multiple catch blocks for a single try block, but you have to follow one order, that is the exception, the generic exception class catch block should be always in the end. For suppose if you have this catch block in the beginning itself, what will happen? You see, it is saying unreachable catch block. Why? Because exception is the parent of all the exception classes. So whatever might be the exception you get from here, that will be handled by exception. Then though whatever might be the exception that you get from here, it is being handled by this exception. Then what is the purpose of adding this? There is no purpose, right? These will never get executed. These lines will never get executed. Then why do we have to have it? So that is the reason we will keep the catch block of a generic exception in the bottom of the catch blocks, so that if it gets index out of bounds exception, it will enter into this. If it gets null pointer exception, it gets into this. But if it gets any other exception that we didn't handle here, like for example, element not found exception, then it will go into the generic exception class. Is it clear? Okay. And some of those things I have mentioned here, I'll share this notes to you so you can go through it. Now, let us see the methods which are related to the exception class and give some more information about the exception. Okay, if you want to display information about the exception to the end user, then you have some methods. Those methods are toString, getMessage, and print stack trace. Okay, whenever there is an exception, it will give us some information that it is giving this. Here it is not there. So we are having this try catch block, right? So whenever we are having them some exception, like for example this one, if I run it, you will see an exception. You see, this is exception. The exception name is null pointer exception, and the message for this null pointer exception is this: cannot invoke blah blah blah, and then the stack trace from which line it is getting. This is the stack trace from exception handling class, line number 12 is being generated, right? So this exception information is there. Now I want to show this information to the user as part of the catch block. I don't want to stop abruptly. I want to continue the execution, but I want to give the user that this exception is there in between. Okay. For example, this index out of bounds exception. Now I want to handle this index out of bounds exception. Instead of writing I'm in IOBE block, okay, let it be I'm in IOBE block. I can also use IOB dot print stack trace, so which will give me the complete information about the exception at the end. Now here, you see, the execution is completed smoothly. This is end of my program. That means it executed till the end. At the end, it is throwing me the complete exception message when it is in the IOBE block. You see, java.lang.array index out of bounds exception. Now I don't want all these messages. I just want to know what is the exception, or I just want to know what is the message, or I just want to know this complete information. So if I want the complete information, I'll get this. Okay. Now I don't want the complete information. I want only the message. Okay, then I'll say IOBE dot get message, which is giving us a string. So I want to print the string, right? So I'll use CSO string. Okay, now let me run this. You see the message index 4 out of bounds for length 4. Let me say some message here. Exception. You see there is an exception which is saying exception occurred is index 4 out of bounds for length 4. Why is this coming? Because I'm using this get message. Suppose I used this print stack trace. Just observe the message. Now you see this. We have this index 4 out of bounds for length 4. Now let us see for print stack trace. Where is that message? Here is the message. You see it? So the message from this exception is being printed with the help of get message method. If you want the complete information about the exception, then we use print stack. Then the other method, other message is toString, which will give the information about this line, only this line. It will give the exception type and the exception message. Okay, now let me show you that toString. I'll come to this. ToString. This is going to convert it to a string. So I'll say CSO again. Okay. Now let me run this. You observe the message. See, it is giving the exception name and the exception message. So when we use toString, it will give the exception name and exception message. When we use get message, it will give only the message of the exception. What is the message? And when we use print stack trace, it is going to give complete information about the exception. Is that clear? Okay. So we are left with throw and throws keyword and exception delegation. As the time is up, let us continue this throws and throw keyword in our next session. Okay. After this, we'll also start test it. Okay. Any questions in today's session? About exception handling or page factory model annotations? No. Fine. Have a great weekend. Have a good night. Bye-bye.
Bye, Nikhil.